Hello and welcome to the Urban Garden Survival Show, and this is episode 2, and today we're just doing part 1 of a little series called 10 Popular Veggies or Fruit to Grow in Your Urban Garden. So I'm your host, Lynn Carey, and what we want to cover today is really the first 5 of these particular veggies or fruits, and obviously where you can grow them, as well as basically the growing tips and health benefits, information just relating to each plant and how that affects survival or self-sufficiency. And also I want to cover at the end just what you can do next, as well as just give you a little bit more info on what's coming up in the next episode. So let's get started. Now, can you grow these in your garden? Well, obviously I don't know where you live and what sort of situation you're in, and everyone has to take into account their own particular individual conditions. But generally speaking, things can be pretty adaptable, assuming that you take into account your space, conditions, etc. So which of these fruits would you like to grow? Well, clearly, there's so many different things that really do come into deciding what to grow. Things like you and your family's personal likes and dislikes, your plans just for your garden, what your reasons are for having certain foods growing, and what you can afford, what's available locally. So just to kick this off, let's start off with probably one of the most popular vegetables around, or fruits in actual fact, and that's tomatoes. And these are so popular and very versatile, obviously, and even though they are technically a fruit, we obviously use them a bit like a vegetable, and we use them in savoury type dishes. Basically, you can obviously buy them at the shops, but the trouble is that often these have been artificially ripened, gassed, etc., and they just don't taste as good. Sometimes they may look nice, but they just lack a lot of flavour often. So basically, if you're growing these, you want to be able to, depending on your climate again, grow them through the warmer months. You can also get a head start, starting your seedlings off in a greenhouse or a cold frame or some sort of warm environment prior to being able to plant them out in your garden. Now, they usually like weekly applications of compost tea, seaweed solution. That's usually a good combination, and you can also throw in some fish emulsion fertilizer, something like that. You also want to think about rotating your crops with these, because if you keep growing these in the same bed, they do become very susceptible to diseases like wilt and root nematodes that basically start to kill them off a lot earlier than they need to be. So they like a well-drained soil, something that's nicely composted and in a nice sunny position with regular and consistent watering. Now, you can also grow them in pots or raised beds, but generally speaking they'll need some sort of support with a trellis, although you can get some smaller bush varieties depending again on what sort of a situation you prefer. Tomatoes have huge amounts of health benefits as well. They're loaded with antioxidants. They're great for detox diets. They contain lycopene, which actually gives the fruit its colour, and that's an antioxidant compound, which some studies have shown can reduce the incidence of certain types of cancer and perhaps lower the risk of heart disease, macular degenerative diseases. So they improve your immune system, and they can lower your lipid oxidation. That just means oxidating or fat molecules that are becoming damaged over time, and they also become inflamed. So it can actually help to reduce inflammation and aging, which can lead to disease. Now, studies also show that it can lower bad cholesterol and the LDLs and protect enzymes and DNA, as well as other cellular fats. Generally speaking, fat is of course very important in our cells, the good type of fat, so you want to protect that as well. Now, there are possible health problems I should highlight. Some people actually can't eat tomatoes or other members of the nightshade family, things like potatoes, aubergine, or eggplant as we call them in Australia. Now this can be temporary for some people, or it can be long term depending on their circumstances. So some people with arthritic type complaints have found nightshade plants to be a problem, and when they've eliminated those from their diet, their condition has improved. So assuming all else, or assuming you don't have arthritic conditions or any sensitivity to tomatoes, then they can obviously have those health benefits we mentioned before. Now, culinary uses, obviously they're very versatile. Salads, sandwiches, Italian dishes, pastas, pizzas, Thai recipes, soups, and one of my favourites for adding to a fresh juices or green smoothies, and especially if you just throw a bit of basil in there as well. They keep longer in the refrigerator, but unfortunately they do lose some of their flavour then. So when you pick them, even though ideally you pick them and eat them straight away, that's what's best if you can let them ripen on the vine. But if you do pick some and you need to put them in there, or keep them rather for a day or two, you can keep them in a fruit bowl without any problem, and they will retain that flavour. Obviously, if it's going to be longer, then you may want to refrigerate them. So survival and self-sufficiency uses. Well, obviously they're great for canning and preserving, and you can, using tins or jars, you can also dehydrate them and store them as well. And they can be stored for a longer period of time if they're dehydrated and actually vacuum sealed. They can also be frozen and basically kept for a set period of time. Freezing food, of course, doesn't last as long. That's the shortest, has the shortest shelf life. And they can also be turned into sauces and chutneys and relish and other things like that. Now, my favourite method of storing food is dehydration. Primarily, one, because it's so lightweight, and it stores so much longer, and it's just really helpful for being able to use for meals, like if you're hiking or camping, things like that. So that's what makes it my favourite. Now, lettuce and salad greens is what's coming up next. That's number 2. Now, I've kind of combined this because there's so many different types of greens that you can throw into a salad. And while lettuce is just basic lettuce is reasonably plain, there's so many other things you can add that really do make it a lot more interesting. So you can't really have a garden without salad greens. Well, at least I don't think you can. So they love sun. Just some growing tips. They really like the sun and they do like a little bit of shade though, so they can tolerate sun and partial shade. They prefer well-drained and composted or manured soil, and again, consistent watering. With these leafy vegetables in particular, you really want to make sure that watering is consistent, particularly if you live in any sort of warm climate. Certainly mulching will help, but if you let them wilt, what that actually is doing is it's stressing the plant, and then even though they may come back, it actually weakens the plant, so they then become a lot more susceptible to disease and are probably going to bolt to seed a lot quicker than they would if they were maintained a bit more consistently. Now, they don't like acidic soil, so if you have tested your soil and you find it's a little bit acid, you can always add a little bit of dolomite or lime or potash. If you've got any sort of wood-burning stove or cook stove, then you can use some of that ash, which will add wood ash, which will then take away a bit of that acidity out of the soil. Just make sure that your wood that you're using or you're burning hasn't been treated with chemicals. Now, with lettuce and salad greens, of course, some more growing tips. They will do quite well in pots as well. And if you have some sort of indoor growing system, like with light, or that's like a little garden pot that has a light over it, they will do quite well in that as well. Now, the one thing that makes them so useful in the garden is the fact that you can sort of treat them as a bit of a perpetual harvest plant where you just pick leaves off as you need. I would suggest staggering planting them as well, so that you can just have a consistent growth of them over a period of time. Now, health benefits, well, obviously chlorophyll, which is what makes green plants green is a wonderful internal cleanser, deodorizer, and a toxin neutralizer. And they're just great for, obviously, in that situation for detoxification. And they're also high in vitamin K, which is essential for blood clotting. And they also have folate, or a type of iron, which is good for the health of your blood and your brain and your nervous system. So basically, green veggies are really very medicinal in their effect, and eating your greens is actually healthy. So culinary uses, obviously they're not used so often in cooked dishes. However, there are some types of greens that of course are used cooked, whereas just your plain iceberg lettuce generally isn't. And most of the best nutritional value when eaten raw, most of the best nutritional value comes when you eat it raw, and this is why I like to add it to things like green smoothies. The other thing you can do is dry them and then powder them up, and then you can use that powder, make your own green powders basically, and add those to green smoothies or other juices. So for self-sufficiency and self-survival uses, you want to again consider what I was just talking about in relation to drying them and using them as powders. This means you can supplement your diet and basically give yourself some hidden greens. Really good for children too if you have trouble getting them to eat their salads and their greens. They can't really be frozen so much or canned, so there are limits to their storage ability, but certainly dehydration and turning them into nice green powders is perhaps one of their best long-term uses. So generally you can also use the different coloured lettuces like the red lettuce and other types as well, which they've got quite a few varieties that will add a bit of variety to your salads, I guess, as well as to your if you dry them, to your dried powders. And additionally to your lettuce, you can add some other greens like your spinach and kale or your chards, and you can add those to your powders, but you can also make things like kale chips, which again are quite yummy. So I just mentioned again there about the green powders and the fact that you can actually save quite a bit of money. Those dehydrated green powders can be extremely expensive. Okay, number 3 is peas and beans. Now these are really important from a staple point of view, especially if you are on a vegan diet. Legumes and pulses make great filling additions to a lot of recipes, and they're really delicious as well. Now, growing tips, usually grown through cooler months. However, again, it depends on the extremes in your climate. Just check out the information for your particular zone. Only needs moderate fertilizer, but still a nice well-developed humus or soil. They also prefer slightly alkaline soil, so you can prepare the bed about a month before, depending on the results of the soil test, and you might want to again add your wood ash or a bit of lime or potash. They like sun to partial shade, and these plants are really quite useful when you're doing plant rotation and your crop rotation. So when you're planting your garden, the fact that these plants will fix nitrogen in the soil means that they're a really good plant to plant in a bed that you're going to be wanting to plant the next lot of plants that actually who need nitrogen. So you don't want to plant peas again or any legumes in the same bed that you've just taken those out of. Obviously, rotating your crops is really important. And they don't like a nitrogen-rich soil either. So again, follow those up with the plants that really do appreciate the nitrogen. So it's just another way to replenish your soil when you're planting your garden beds. So with watering, again, I think pretty much with most vegetables, and it's important to have consistent watering. If you overwater plants, they will often become more susceptible to fungal diseases and other problems. So certainly not overwatering, but consistent watering. Health benefits of legumes and peas, well, they're generally considered a protein, even though they are a starchy type protein. They are also an incomplete protein. However, when you mix up things like your legumes and your peas, beans, and you mix them with other vegetables, what happens is that you then get a complete protein mix. So it's not really an issue that they aren't complete proteins, in case that's something that you've heard. They're high in fibre, in iron and other essential minerals and vitamins, and as I mentioned, they're a carbohydrate or a complex carbohydrate food, and they are very filling, very satisfying foods to add to a diet, particularly if you are a vegan or vegetarian. Very useful in the kitchen, very versatile. You can use them either sprouted. I say raw in salads, I should say sprouted, because obviously you're not going to chew on some dried bean in a salad. So if you sprout them, then they are perfect for salads. If you want to add them to soups or smoothies, again, you can soak the dried beans or peas before you add them to your soups. You can also sprout them to add to things like salads or your green juices and smoothies. They are great too as a bit of a standalone vegetable with certain recipes as well. So quite versatile. From self-sufficiency point of view and survival, they're quite important because of the staple aspect, because they're such I suppose, filling. They provide a good amount of calories. They provide the protein and the complex carbohydrates and the fibre, as well as nutrition. They also store really well, and they obviously dehydrate or dry out quite fine. And they can be frozen if they're cooked and canned. Again, I much prefer drying these types of foods. So certainly, things like split peas, beans, lentils, legumes, they're much better dried from my experience. So number 4 we want to cover is carrots, another popular vegetable and very nutritious. They are again a starch vegetable, so quite filling and quite satisfying when added to various recipes. When you're growing carrots, then again, keep in mind they really don't do so well in warmer climates, but they can be grown most of the year through more temperate and cooler zones. They're suitable for growing in a cold frame crop to extend your growing season, but you don't really want to be transplanting them once they've started to grow. So you really need to think about planting them where you want them to grow. And you want to make sure that the bed is well prepared, well dug over, not lots of clumpy bits or stony, because otherwise that's going to encourage branching of that of the main taproot. And what you're really after is that main taproot to be nice and straight. So while the soil wants to be good quality, slightly sandy so that it's easier for the taproot to go down, you don't want to have too much in the way of fertilizers or like manure, because unless it's really well aged or matured, because that again will just cause it to send out a lot of roots rather than the one main taproot. You don't want to overwater. Again, it'll tend to split the carrots, the roots, and basically you want, especially early in the piece, you want that taproot to be heading down to look for moisture. So, some watering on, you just need to be a little bit careful about how you're going about that. Now, they're best grown, as I said, straight from seed and not from seedlings, because they don't transplant well, and make sure you prepare the bed, which I've already covered. Now, growing problems with carrots. They can be a little tricky. Multiple roots, misshapen carrots, hairy roots are all problems that often occur when you're trying to grow carrots, particularly if you haven't much experience with them. So too much nitrogen, which means don't over fertilize. You don't want to be overcrowding them, and you want to make sure that the soil is nicely broken up and not stony. So other problems with them, pests and diseases. The healthier your soil and the plants, obviously the less likely you're going to have issues with diseases or pests. Now, root knot nematodes can be a problem, which is another reason why you want to be careful with tomatoes, because they tend to really get attracted to tomato beds, I've found. And once you've got that problem in your soil, it is a little bit tricky to get rid of it. So if you think you've got that problem, you might want to look into things like solarizing your soil, which means using like a black plastic covering over the soil in the hot weather, in the middle of summer, so that it can actually sterilize the soil. You can also do mass plantings of calendula to help get rid of them as well. Now, cracked or split roots, again, is caused by, or split carrots, is caused from too much watering. And it's like, if you have a heavy rainfall in the garden that you would rather have not had, then things like tomatoes and carrots can split as well. Now, you don't want to leave carrots in the ground too long either, because what they will do is they will put down their main taproot first, but once that's well down, then they start to out with their secondary root system, which is what starts making them all hairy. So keep a bit of a watch on your carrots as they're growing. Now, health benefits. Carrots have a ton of health benefits. Basically packed with alpha and beta carotenes, types of vitamin A. And carotenes have been shown to inhibit tumour growth, and both cooking and juicing make carotenes more accessible for digestion. And juicing, the better your juicer, the more it'll break down those molecules in the vegetables. Diabetics may not be able to digest carotenes very well, and just another reason to look at, all the natural and effective ways you can actually overcome diabetes and pre-diabetic conditions. Carrots are also rather high in their starch, which gets converted to sugar, so they tend to be a little bit of a sweeter vegetable, and as a consequence as well, depending on how well balanced your diet is as a diabetic, then these could be not the ideal food when you're starting to bring your diabetes under control. They are good for liver cleansing and great to add to fresh juices and smoothies. Obviously great in salads and great in juices, as I just said, and smoothies. They're great for raw snacks, used in dips, and they're also obviously very versatile with cooked foods as well, whether it's soups or stews or just as a vegetable on their own. You can also use them for sweet recipes like carrot cake, and obviously they can be baked or broiled or barbecued as well. So they are quite versatile in the kitchen. From a survival and self-sufficiency point of view, again, these dry really well. And when you're making up those, those jars with a meal in a jar, adding all your veggies that all gets added to the pot later on. Carrots are one of the main things, one of the types of vegetables you might be adding to, say, a jar of a stew or a soup. And basically they dehydrate really well, and they'll last for an awfully long time. They can be frozen and canned as well, obviously, and they can also be kept just straight out of the ground for quite some time in a root cellar where there's a good airflow and a cool environment. But of course, over time, nutritional value does tend to drop off. So if you're going to store food, it's always good to do it when they're straight, fresh picked, because then you're going to get the maximum amount of nutrition from that vegetable, and keep that stored in as much as possible. So I just mentioned there about the meal mixes that you can make, and they're great for camping and for just emergency use as well. So number 5, this is our last one for this part today, and that's potatoes. Really a very popular staple veggie, and I suppose they get a little bit of bad press, if you like, people tend to think, you know, they're not very good for you, and certainly if you're just eating them as fries that have been cooked in bad oils, well then definitely not very good for you. But if you're actually using the potato with its skin still intact in particular, then you're really getting a very nutritious vegetable, especially if you're a vegan or a vegetarian and you're combining it with all the other veggies and beans or pulses that you can. You're getting a really satisfying and nutritious vegetable. Now, growing tips, they don't like extremes in temperature, frosts or heat. They grow best in a temperate climate, but they can do well in most, providing that it's the right time of the year and you can just create the right conditions. They do like full sun and consistent watering, but once the plants have actually started to die off, well then you don't want to be watering them too much at that point because they're not really taking it in, so you'll end up with things becoming more susceptible to rot. So they like a well-drained, fertile and slightly acidic soil, and they are really well suited to no-dig methods of gardening and raised bed methods, and you can grow them in certain types of containers where you have a way of raising that bed up as you go and mounding them up with mulch, etc. They're also subject to root knot nematode, so again it's something you want to make sure isn't present in your garden bed or your soil. And they also like well-drained, fertile and slightly acidic soil. I think I've said that just in case you didn't get it the first time. Now for health benefits, as I mentioned, you want to make sure that as often as possible you leave the skin intact, because most of the nutrition is just under the skin, and the skin itself of course is a part of the fibre that's so good for you. And basically once you peel them and throw that away, you're kind of leaving yourself mostly with the starch. Potatoes are very alkaline though, and so there are uses for them even raw to alkalize certain things. Now, you never want to eat potatoes that are going green. Light, you want to store them in a dark, cool place, because if they get access to light, too much light, they start to go green, and basically that starts to form a chemical called solanine, which is a natural insecticide and is actually poisonous for us, and so you don't want to eat green potatoes. Home remedies I just touched on. They can also be used in poultices. They're good for burns, and as I mentioned, alkalizing. The juice is very alkalizing for the body, which is certainly a benefit for most of us. So culinary uses, obviously very versatile. Boiled, broiled, baked, barbecued. Great for adding to fresh vegetable juice, again, when you're aiming for an alkaline condition. You probably wouldn't be adding a lot because they're not exactly the tastiest juice, but just if you wanted to make it extra alkaline, you can certainly throw some in. If you like fries, then a healthy alternative is to actually chop them up, leaving the skins on, perhaps a little bit bigger than your thin ones, brush them with some sort of oil, like a good quality virgin olive oil, for example, or a coconut oil even, and then just bake them in the oven, and you'll end up with your fries or wedges, depending. So for self-sufficiency and survival, again, high energy foods, perfect for dehydration, can be frozen, canned, kept in, frozen if they're cooked or partially cooked. Again, it's the case. A lot of vegetables need to be just partially cooked before they're frozen, and certainly great dried. Again, another root cellar type storage vegetable, but again, just be aware of the fact that you are losing some nutritional value, and over time they do deteriorate. So basically that's pretty much covered all our vegetables. I just want to make sure that we know what you're going to be doing next. So I think firstly for yourself, you need to decide which vegetables work best for you in your garden, for your family, And then maybe start planning for the next growing season. We're just coming into spring in the US. We're just coming into autumn in Australia right now as I'm making this. So basically start looking at what you're going to be growing, where you are, and how you're going to be doing that, and just start planning your garden. Also, just consider getting seeds for whatever vegetables you want early. Basically, heirloom seeds are really what I tend to recommend because they tend to be the most tried and true, and they tend to be more hardy and less susceptible to disease and problems. Now, if you haven't already, please head over to urbangardensurvival.com and check out my website, and you'll find that there's other places you can also connect up with, like Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. So I look forward to meeting you there. I would really appreciate being able to hear from you. Certainly, if you want a free course, you can sign up on my website and subscribe to my email list, and you can download a 40-page ebook about container gardening, as well as receive your mini course on the basics of organic gardening. So thank you very much for listening, and for the next episode, basically we want to cover the next 5 veggies in part 2 of this series. And certainly if you'd rather watch this podcast and not just listen, then just head over to my website again, because over there I've got the video. And so thank you again for listening, and until next time, this is Lynn Carey signing out for Urban Garden Survival Show. Thank you very much. See you then. Bye.